Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Second Opinion, the sports medicine podcast. Glad to have you guys listening. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
We are here with you tonight. Man, just finished another week of football. I was excited to talk to you tonight, Dustin, because there were some interesting injuries that we haven't seen this year. And I had a patient that had a question earlier today, and I said, well, I'm going to be on my podcast later. I'll ask the number one guy that I like to go to when I have a question and I want to get another opinion. So that's you, my friend.
Yeah, perfect. I'm here. No,
Yeah.
it's always fun with the patients coming in and they know we're doing this and they kind of bring up questions for us. I'm like, you know what? That's a good topic. We'll stew on that. So it is fun. It's
I'm
nice
liking
that
that we're getting. I'm liking that we're getting more of that. Is what I was going to say.
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's fun. It's getting some legs under it and we're getting the momentum going and it's fun.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. So out of the few injuries that we were kind of talking about off air, which one jumped out at you this week that you were like, "Whoa, that was crazy," or "That was super serious," or what one
Yeah.
concerned you?
The Kansas City Watson one, that's always a scary one. I mean, those guys are always, coming across and reaching out, extending and coming down, and it can happen at any time. And he, as we talked about, dislocated his elbow, which, is a painful one for sure. And kind of scary when it happens and scary for everybody kind of involved because a few things could be going on at that moment. And you got to kind of go through the triage and figure out really quick on field, get them off field, test the other things to make sure what you're dealing with.
Have you had a dislocated elbow that you have had to treat on the field or post fact, for rehab?
Yeah, I've had kids with dislocated elbows. Basically, when a sibling or a parent goes to pick up the kid and grabs their hands and pulls, sometimes that radial head can pop out,
Mm-hmm.
and it does happen. So yeah, I've had, unfortunately, an opportunity to reduce some of those and go through the triage and make sure that there's no extra issues with them. But haven't had any with the athletes though.
Yeah, yeah. I
What
think the
about you?
most bursa issues, elbow bursa issues, a couple elbow fractures. But this injury with Curtis Watson, the wide receiver for the Chiefs, that was an elbow dislocation, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was an elbow dislocation, yeah. And the report showed that they took him in X-rays, had MRI today, no fractures and no ligament issues or extra soft tissue issues. So that's huge for recovery.
That's amazing, right? Like you would think if that happens, there's going to be one or the other, sometimes both.
Yes. Yeah.
Frequently, like with an ACL, I know with mine, I had a tear plus a fracture, multiple tears, and fracture and bone bruise. So he's really lucky. That's going to cut down his, recovery time, and his return to play will be, shortened as well.
Yeah, for sure. With those injuries, the biggest concern on field that we kind of triage that I was kind of alluding to is making sure that, because typically the most common way it goes dislocates is posterior, it goes backwards. So the two long bones of the lower arm go behind the long bone of the upper arm, right? So
Right.
so that's, and when that happens, there's arteries, there's blood vessels and nerves that run around those three bones, and so sometimes those can get impinged. So basically, when they get them off, they're checking basically for any kind of real obvious deformities besides the dislocation, but any kind of break or compound issues through the skin. And then they're going to check for the capillary refills for the vascular and then check for the nerve supply. And once those are all cleared, then they can, get them back, get them x-rays. Once the x-rays clear, then they'll get that MRI. So like you said, going through all that, check, everything looking good. The recovery timeline starts shrinking down even far. So now they're talking, just a few weeks, could be back within 3 weeks, on
Sure.
the short end, if everything goes well, as if they can get that swelling down and get those functional movements back.
Yeah, without any, ligamentous damage, without a fracture that has to heal, then it's just a matter of reducing the inflammation. And if there's any strength issues that are going on secondary to that dislocation, maybe a little bit of a weak grip, or sometimes you get some numbness, tingling, even though there's not nerve damage. You might still, that's a traumatic injury to that area, and so there's residual. I mean, imagine when you hit your funny bone
Yeah.
and how long you feel that for
Hmm.
compared to that. So he's really lucky. When I saw that happen, I thought, actually, my first thought wasn't an elbow dislocation. My first thought was, man, I think he really like hyperextended his at least his arm, and maybe separated his shoulder. Perhaps it was just an
Yeah.
awkward kind of uh, situation.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw it?
Yeah, same thing. You worry about the shoulder. The shoulder is the most unstable joint in the body, so I instantly worry about that, but yeah, I'm glad, like you said, glad that it's only an elbow, and that it, was not more serious.
Yeah. You mentioned with kids, that was something I didn't think of right away, but you're right. Young kids are still developing. Sometimes, you're multitasking, you grab your child, pick them up. And
Yeah.
I haven't seen that in the elbow, though. I've seen that in the last time I saw something similar to that was a shoulder issue, and it was a sprain. It wasn't like shoulder popped out. She said she heard like a pop
Hmm.
and was concerned maybe the dislocated shoulder. And it was the day before. And I was like, if it was dislocated, you wouldn't have had to wait, a whole night. He wouldn't have
Yeah.
slept on it. I'm pretty sure you're okay, but bring him in. Um, but yeah, the elbow. So you've seen that a couple times, just hyperextension, I guess.
Yeah, you mean to reduce it or to
No, like mechanism of injury, like when
yeah, yeah, it's a distraction type thing. They're lifting them up. A lot of times parents are just having fun too, playing,
sure,
doesn't have to be a mean, malicious, traumatic thing either.
yeah,
It could just be playing or doing something kind of very, nonchalant, and it happens.
yeah. No, I could see that. Well, that's good. So prognosis on him shortened. Should be able to return back to play way sooner than if obviously he had a fracture, which is 4 to 6 weeks, probably minimal healing time. And if something was torn, then that if you have to have surgery, that's an extended period. So his season is not lost, is what you're saying.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, and with those luckily with those, even as a receiver, there's great tape jobs, there's great bracing that even if it's a little, unstable and a little painful, that they can stabilize it pretty good for game time where he won't lose too much or any mobility with it, but just kind of protect it. So
Yeah. What I know you probably saw the Justin Fields injury with his thumb, or heard about it at least.
yeah.
Uh, it made me think of our first time out when we went for our first kind of sports internship. Do you remember where that was?
In San Jose.
In San Jose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The San Jose Raiders.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I saw Justin Fields with his thumb dislocation, I was like, man, I got to bring that up with Dustin. That was the first thing I thought of. And, you know, I'll recount the story on how I remember it quickly, and then you tell me what you remember. But in
Uh-huh.
my memory, it was a kind of like a police league, or like
Yeah.
a first responders league, but tackle football. So
Mhm.
imagine law enforcement, police versus firefighters. And we went out with one of our instructors as basically assistant trainers. And one of our first times out, I believe, if I
Mhm.
remember right. Anyways, a player comes out and he had a thumb dislocation. And our instructor, who was the head trainer, couldn't relocate it. It was like a strength issue,
Mhm.
is what I recall. And she turned to Dustin, and I was like, okay, one of you guys is going to have to pull.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you tugged and I got it, or
Mm.
if it was vice versa.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of being like, oh man, I thought we were just taping, and here
Yeah.
we are. And this guy was big. And I was
Big.
thinking, if it misses, he's going to really not be happy. And
Mhm.
uh, it went back. But
Yeah.
some fuzzy details, that was a long time
Mhm.
ago. So jog
Yeah.
my memory. What do you remember
No,
about
yeah, we got it back and had to, but then I remember taping it up pretty good and I pretty sure we sent them back out there.
it? Yeah.
Be naive and just going with everything. I don't recall. I just recall kind of being, just wide-eyed and going, "Holy crap, this is happening!" Because you're super green.
Yeah.
You're just expecting to go out there and be kind of shadows on it, and not expecting to actually get hands on. boots on the ground kind of. And yeah, you get thrust into that and adrenaline kicks in and you just start moving. And then afterwards, the dust settles, the adrenaline calms down.
Like, did
Yeah.
we do that? Dang, we did that. That was
Yeah,
crazy. That was over 20 years ago, probably.
man.
Dang.
Yeah.
And now look at you.
2000. Yeah. Oh man.
Just think, man, back then, if we would have talked about all the people that we've treated and the places that we've been and the opportunities we've had, it would have been
Yeah.
like, I will take this for sure. I
Yeah.
don't know if I would have believed you during those exam days and during those long nights of studying, but I will say we had a goal, right? We had a direction we wanted to move in, and we had an ambition to continue to learn about sports medicine in all areas, not just chiropractic. And so, man, I'm glad that you were along that journey to kind of motivate me. And, some of those things you don't want to do alone. So I appreciate those times. And
Yeah.
man, it all started then, and here we are.
Yeah, vice versa. I always, when I get asked that story in interviews, I always give you ultimate credit for why I'm here doing what I do. Without you making that call to me, I mean, back then we didn't even text. We didn't have a text. We didn't
Yeah.
text. We didn't. You had to pick up the phone, and I just remember, and I thinking you crazy for wanting just to roll up on a open tryout at an arena. So arena football, and but I tagged along with you, and I'm so grateful
Well,
that you had the ambition to even do that. I would have never done that on my own. That was way out of my comfort zone.
man, well,
So
something spoke to me, and you might have been the deal clincher. Maybe if it was just me solo, they would have been like, nah, we're
yeah,
out.
it
So
was definitely a
how,
team approach for sure. We were a package deal.
for sure. Well, that thumb injury, when I saw Justin Fields with his thumb dislocation, it brought me back to that injury way back then. I've had a thumb issue on my left thumb that seems to pop out every so often if I put it in a particular position. Um, this is Justin's throwing hand, though, right?
Yeah,
So it
right.
affects his grip. From somebody who's thrown a couple times, if you hurt your pinky finger, that matters a little bit. But I would say that the most important digit for me would be my thumb for that grip reason. Some might say maybe the index finger, but if you don't have that grip, that ball's typically going to sail. What do you do in that situation? You have a quarterback that has a busted thumb, a dislocated thumb, a thumb injury. Where do you
Yeah.
go from there?
That's a tough one, especially not even thinking about throwing, but just being under center. Every time he's taking a snap, that ball's coming back quick and hard. And not only does he have to receive that, with impact, he's got to get out of the way of the center that's taking on another 280, 300-pound guy. So he's got to be moving quick. So it's not like he has time to really set up and have his feels with that ball, right? It's just coming, it's impulse, it's reaction time. And so that every time it's slamming in there, that kind of sets off the whole cascade of what he's feeling. And then that might even make it a little numb each time, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
he's dropping back and then having to get the grip and think those are things that typically he's doing in reaction mode, not even having to think about it because he's done it so many times. Now his brain has to go to that thumb, process everything on top of processing the routes, processing who's coming at him. So it's just one more element. And like I talk to my patients about, it's like having 10 radios going on, right? If I want to
Mm-hmm.
listen to the one, I have to remove 9. Well, he just added a radio to the static that he has to deal with, right? So his nervous system has to deal with one more element that it normally won't have to. So that plays into it from a system standpoint, not, I'm
It's like
getting kind
juggling
of
one more ball.
yeah, so that's not even talking about actually the mechanics of throwing with that bum thumb. I don't think it's possible in that position. Like I said, I would rather it be the index because you can kind of pull off of that and have the other 3 to make something happen. But you have to grip and yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll tape it up. There's different things they can do to tape it up with some mobility to protect it a little. The biggest concern, he could probably deal with the pain, receive it, but it's each time getting more and more strained as he's receiving that, snap. He'll probably go from shotgun, that's a little easier impact, and if he's going to play. But they'll tape it up. They'll do some ligamentous type tape jobs where they're going to do figure eights around those joints, lock it up, stabilize it to where he still has mobility. But and that might be even a case where they do. You asked me a couple of podcasts, hey, do you inject that joint? And I said for that like AC joint, I don't think they inject that. But for this thumb, that might be a different story, or use something else, that just to take the edge off, get the inflammation down. So
Yeah, no, I think there's a couple quarterbacks with hand injuries last night. Justin Herbert was the second game with a busted finger. He had the bye week to recover, so that's obviously helpful, right? You get a week off, not 2 weeks removed from the injury, like you said with Justin Fields. He's taken 60 minutes of pounding on that hand, in the black and white of does it get better or does it get worse after that? It's going to feel worse after a game of play action and handing off and fighting off defenders and pump faking and all the things that it entails. And so with Justin, I noticed that yesterday there was a few balls that maybe he typically hits. He had a couple of overthrows. It just affected his accuracy, is what I'm saying, and not just his, but any quarterback. So I look to see what Justin Fields' accuracy is next week, and with if he comes out and plays, I'll be, to be honest, surprised. And when he comes back, I'll be looking for his accuracy more than anything. The ball sail. Does he have the velocity on his throws? A lot of that comes from grip strength first and foremost. And then also when you fall down too. I mean, you use your hands so much when you fall to protect yourself. And now you don't want to have that hand hit the ground. And so you fall in a different way. Does that lead to something else, a shoulder issue or something else? So, you have to be cognizant. Obviously, it's a quarterback, it's his throwing hand. It's the worst thing. It's like a wide receiver with an ankle or a hamstring. So, I'm sure he's doing all the things. We'll find out more as the week goes on.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that's going to play into, how the defense attacks it too. So, yeah. And I don't know how big his hands are either. If you got big mitts, it's not going to impact it as much, right?
That's true.
If that ball is pretty small in your hand, it's not going to impact it. I don't know, what his measurements are, if he's known for, some of those quarterbacks just have huge hands that's really not an issue.
Yeah.
So, and the old school, quarterbacks, they played with busted fingers all the time. It's just a different game now.
Yeah. In my head, those games are more in the wind, in the elements, rain, mud. Ball, isn't as spirally, when you see, there's definitely not the velocity on some of those throws. You see those old highlights and,
the
like,
Steelers, the Bradshaws.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and now it's on turf. Wow. There's,
it's like you're playing a video game.
It really is.
Yeah. So
it's Madden versus NFL Blitz. You remember that game?
Yeah. Yep. You're right.
I would whip you in that game.
Oh, man. Okay. Game on. Let's go. We'll find some old vintage somewhere.
We were talking about quarterbacks with Justin Fields. One of my favorite quarterbacks is Jimmy Garrapalo, ex-49er. He has a pedigree behind Tom Brady. Most recently, he's playing for oh my goodness, I almost said Oakland Raiders. I almost messed up.
Yeah.
For Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sorry. And he had a pretty scary injury this weekend. He apparently got taken to the hospital, and I wanted to see what you knew about that since that was your QB.
Yeah, so I couldn't tell what happened. I mean, they said there was mixed reports, but said he went down with a back injury and that he'd been dealing with some stuff. It didn't look like a terrible hit. He got up on his own. He kind of was holding his back a little. But then you don't necessarily, the way he walked off didn't really look like strain or disc or nerve. And then to go into an ambulance and go, get it checked out, you're really not doing that with a hot disc or something. Well, Definitely his posture wasn't a hot disc. We've seen those. So I couldn't find any more what the follow-up was, and I, saw some reports that there were some internal issues going on. So what my thought process was that, they might have been fearful of some kidney issues
That's
because
what I thought too.
because the way he got up and the way he kind of just held the, low back, it's kind of the posture of the, and when you get a kidney blow like that or a hit, it's a different feel. So, he comes off, he's reporting something a little different to where there's some red flags where they want to go get that checked out and don't want to they don't want to wait till he's peeing blood to figure out something. So,
That's it. Yeah, exactly right. That's kind of what I was thinking. There could be bruising there. It's just like a precautionary thing. Why not versus weight? And yeah, I didn't catch any new update from that other than he checked out of the hospital. And presumably, if that's the case, it was nothing super serious. But you're right in that it is an abnormality that you would have a player go. You're like, well, what happened? Was there something more? It looked pretty innocuous when I first saw it.
yeah, me too.
So with that, do you suspect that he'll be out for a little bit because of it, or do you think it was just a scare and it's like, everything checked out, tests are negative?
Yeah, if
Very
we're
few things.
speculating and think that, he went and from what you're saying, he was able to leave the hospital and it wasn't an issue, I would say that, they've ruled out all the scary stuff and then they're just going to manage the any kind of pain, and that pain will typically be kind of a bruisey, achy pain.
Mhm.
So they'll kind of manage that, see how he goes, see if he can work through it, and then he'll probably be good to go since they know there's no scary things going on.
Right.
Then it's up to him managing the discomfort and the pain from it.
There's been a lot of QB injuries. I mean, obviously they're a target. Another one I want to bring up is Anthony Richardson. Brought him up last week. He had an AC joint injury. Most recently, what I've read is that he might be out for the rest of the season. Perhaps they're contemplating if he's going to have surgery on that AC joint.
Mm.
I spoke of the time that I sprained my left AC joint, and it was just a sprain, and that was super painful, like limited mobility.
Yeah.
So if they're talking about surgery, I think I know what you're going to say, but what would you suspect is going on with Anthony Richardson that they might put him on the shelf? I mean, he was a promising rookie, had a good start to the year. Fantasy football owners were loving his production for the first few weeks, and now maybe he's out. If he doesn't have surgery, do you think he'll be able to be the same player?
Yeah, so I think going through the process, they've tried for I think a couple weeks now. Has it been a couple weeks or was it just
Yeah,
last week?
no, no,
Yeah, a couple
couple.
weeks. They've had an opportunity to, test it dynamically with motion, and really test the strength and stability of that joint. And the reason why you'd be shelving it and thinking surgery is if nothing they can do really minimizes the pain enough to where he's comfortable to get out there, where it's overwhelming his game at that point where he can't think straight. He's really nervous about it, not in a scared way, but it's just he's not comfortable being back there and taking extra hits. So at that point, they're saying, hey, we've done everything we can. We've protected it. We've taped it. We've braced it. We've padded it. We've tried different meds. We've tried different things. There's nothing that we can do that's touching it right now. So at this point, it's either time or we go in there, lock it up, do some surgery on it, speed up that healing process. And, that's probably where
Give
they're
him
going to go with it.
a fair shake at next season and
Yeah.
come out for the year, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I hope for the young man that he doesn't have to have surgery. Rehab's tough anyways, right? And if you have surgery, just having that finality of, especially for a rookie, especially for a rookie quarterback, there's expectations. He was drafted highly. So I know that's disappointing and that's pressure for him. Um, I had a thought the other day, Dustin, that I've spent so long and you spent so long keeping people healthy. And I know you take the preventative approach to any athletes or entertainers, anybody, any of your patient base that comes to you is like, if you come in pain, let's get you better. But if I can get my hands on you and assess you, let's keep you well even before something happens. my thought was all these players are getting their seasons ended like this. You suit up on a Sunday morning, or you wake up that day and you hope, man, I hope this is the game of the year. I hope this is my best game ever. I hope I show out and that I can contribute so our team wins. And then you get injured and you're off. You're done for the year. My thought was I almost would like to just start from day one when those guys' season's done and catch them the very next day and start that process to get them back. I guess I don't know if I'm articulating that, but I almost get more joy on the comeback of it than the keep you well and keep you from getting injured. It's
Yeah.
almost like there's an unknown on if you kept somebody well, but there's not an unknown on if you've progressed and got somebody better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's two different perspectives, right? That's
Right.
that's us as a healthcare perspective, but no athlete wants to be your comeback story.
Oh, never.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? No, I
Right.
knew that's not what you meant, but I was just thinking, there's always two narratives to that whole
Sure.
story, right? But yeah, absolutely. As healthcare providers, we love those moments, like both of us read and follow all these injuries, and how many do you read and watch and you're just wish you could have your hands on it, and have a touch on being part of that team that gets them back, because
Right.
it can happen. You've done it before, and you want that opportunity because it is a fun story. It's a fun There's phases of it too, right? There's that initial phase where they're, in doubt, frustrated, pissed off, and then they come to the realization, okay, that's not helping. Let's go to work. And then you're like, I've been here all along. It's one of those things,
Right.
the teacher will appear when the student's ready, right? So the
Right.
patient, when they're ready, then they see you, right? And then they
Right.
want your help. And then it's go time, right? And then it's a lot more fun. And then there's that, like, man, then there's that tweener phase where they're like, I think I'm good. And you're like,
Not
I
yet.
don't think so, not yet. So we got a couple more weeks, I'm good, and it's like, nope. And then you get to that point where you're like, you let them go, and you're, it's like letting that stallion out,
Right.
to
Right.
pasture, and the song comes out, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. No,
No,
but yeah,
there's some joy shared in the happiness that an athlete or that a patient feels when they can return to the things that they love doing, whether
yeah,
that's return to sport or return to working out or whatever the case is, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I had that thought. I was like, man, you can keep somebody healthy for 100 games, and it's like, well, what is the tangible thing there that you did that kept them healthy? Maybe they would have
right,
stayed healthy anyways.
hmm,
But
right,
when someone tears something or has an injury and you're there with them weekly or daily and helping them progress, it feels a little different. And I was thinking just the contrast about that contrast.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
good thought.
I want to talk about one more quarterback, and he is maybe the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
Listen, I've had four people. It's only Tuesday evening, and I've had Monday and Tuesday in the office, well, Saturday, Sunday as well, but Monday and Tuesday in the office. I've had four people in the last 2 days ask me about Aaron Rodgers and ask me if I thought he was going to be able to make it back to play this season. And the first three people I answered one way, which I'll tell you. But the last person I said, it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what he thinks. Does
Mhm.
he think he's going to make it back? All these people guessing, speculating, saying, oh, it's too soon and he can't, and this and that. What are your thoughts, bro? Because you've
Yeah.
dealt with an Achilles injury with the superstar. But more than that, why do people care? Like, cheer this guy on. This man's trying to come back miraculously and he's motivating his team. I love it. What's your thought?
Yeah, it's a perfect comeback story. I mean, it was set up, going into New York. I mean, that first game back, I mean, the whole thing was set up beautifully. And then for him to go down, everybody's rooting for him, not everybody, but you know what I mean? Like, this story, from the human side, people want to see him succeed. And the fact that he, had his moment where, he was bummed, and then kind of resurrected it and said, you know what? I'm coming back. I'll be back. As soon as he made that statement, there's no doubt in my mind, because I've been with athletes that have that mindset. You can't stop them. So, like you said, it doesn't matter what all of us medical things, every single medical doctor could tell him that it's not going to happen. he's already made up his mind that it's going to happen and he'll be back. So he doesn't really care what anybody says at this point. He knows where he's going to end up, and that's what's cool. And it's just like we gotta help him get to that point. So,
Thank you.
yeah, so
Yeah, I said to the first three people, well, I think he can. It would be unprecedented, perhaps, on such a short timeline. Does he have a higher probability of re-injury? Yes. I remember Jerry Rice fractured his patella, famously came back within the same season, caught a touchdown pass on a slant off the left side, landed on his knee right in the end zone, refractured his patella, and he was gone for the year again. So that's that susceptibility to re-injury. But really, it only matters what he thinks. How many times has somebody probably told him he wasn't going to make the college team or make the NFL or be a starting quarterback? You're behind Brett Favre, or be an MVP, or be a Super Bowl. Why would you start to listen to somebody else now? You know what I mean? Like, I hope he does make the comeback. And if nothing else, I saw him throwing. I don't know if you saw the clip. Throws his left Achilles, and he was throwing. His right foot was pivoting. He was on his right toes. Transfer of weight is what I'm saying.
yeah.
And he looked great to me for this far out. I just can't wait to see what happens in a few months.
Yeah.
Here's what I do know: he's going to continue to get better day by day, and so let's see where he's at. Right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
But
he's already shrunk that timeline down. I mean, he's probably, in my opinion, probably 4 weeks ahead of schedule right now. If he's already on his foot doing that kind of thing, and I heard he was walking around pretty without, limping and without, assistance. So good for him.
You and I come into contact with a lot of people in pain. Their energy is different. People who are at the top of their craft, their energy is different. People who are super comfortable in life, their energy is different. And so the point of me saying that is, as I come into contact with people throughout the day, I personally feel a little bit, I don't want to be, hokey about it, but sensitive to their energy, or I can read if somebody's upset, or I can feel if maybe they're putting on a smile or there's something going on. And my point of prefacing that is that when I see Aaron Rodgers walk and when I see him on the field, it just exudes confidence, and I think that is contagious. And, the Jets won this weekend.
Yeah.
They were not supposed to win,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if Aaron Rodgers contributed to any of those points, but I know that having him on the sidelines and having him throw contributed to, hey, our guy's back there and he's working, so we're going to work,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's the narrative
Yeah.
on the sideline there for sure.
We'll have more about him during the season. Follow his kind of comeback story. If he doesn't make it back, if he doesn't make it back this year, I think what you said was appropriate about he's ahead of schedule, right? So that's the goal. Instead of being ready in March, he'll be ready maybe in February or January or whenever that timeline is. So
yeah, and even if it's not for this season, the timeline will be, instead of halfway through, preseason or off season, he's already go. As soon as the season ends, I'm go time. Now's my time to get my reps in, right? Versus waiting postseason
to
start point. Something up.
Yeah, not 70% in July. He's 100% in July.
Exactly.
And ready to go. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that pans out and how it goes. I'm going to bring up a couple more injuries, just quick little ticks, just to see if you have some thoughts. The Bills running back, Damian Harris, hurt his neck. He was taken to the hospital. I didn't get too much information as to what happened, but serious enough. Just like that Garrapalo injury, taken to the hospital, that's not a normal, I have a stinger.
Right. Yeah. So that's the only thing I can think of. Either he's got some really sharp pinpoint pain that they want to rule out. I mean, obviously they take x-rays there at the facility, but if it's pinpoint enough, or there's neurologics, then they'll take them.
Yep. The Lions running back has a rib cartilage injury. I had a patient today that said, it's not even a broken rib. I actually just started laughing like that because sometimes I feel like rib cartilage injuries are worse than a rib fracture.
As soon as you said that, that's exactly what I thought, man. Yeah, that sucks because it takes forever to heal. The blood supply, it's brutal. So yeah, I feel for that. You almost rather it be a bone.
Yeah. And he's a running back, so he's going to be taking some hits.
No.
I'll keep an eye on how he comes back, and if he comes back, if he has any setbacks in that recovery. Um, I did want to bring up something cool before we get off and get your final thoughts. It is about a Kelsey brother, so I apologize in advance. I know they're blowing up every single platform in every single way, radio, TV, all that.
I
But
like him. I like him.
I like it too.
Yeah.
It's great because of the storyline of the brothers, but I think it's just awesome that one's, an offensive lineman plays a different position. It's a little less glorious, and he's getting a little bit of the glory,
Mm-hmm.
And that's who I want to speak on. I want to speak on Jason Kelsey. Do you know what he did this week?
Playing wise, or his pregame routine? Did you see?
Playing on the field.
I did not see what he did.
So here's what's cool is he played his 144th consecutive game.
Ooh.
He tied offensive tackle John Runyon for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I believe it was 2002 through 2008 that John Runyon had that record. So this coming Sunday, he plays his 145th game. He's as healthy as you're going to be going into week 7, I believe it is. And so, man, hats off to him.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's an amazing streak in the NFL, playing offensive lineman. That's a lot of seasons, 16 games, 17 games plus playoffs. Like, man, 2020. That's 7, 8
playoffs,
straight
Super Bowls.
Yes, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. I got to know Phillip Rivers a little bit on the Chargers, and he had a streak. I think it was 244 games as a quarterback, and he famously played one time through a torn ACL in an AFC playoff game, maybe the AFC Championship actually, which is amazing. And yeah, hats off to Jason Kelsey. I was kind of surprised to hear that. I didn't know that about him. That is durability.
Yeah, good for him. Well, he takes care of his body real well, and for being a big guy, he's a physical specimen. I follow him and his routine, his pregame routine. He's got it dialed in. So,
what have you seen that documentary with him yet?
Not yet. No, I want to watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you do, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the routines that at least Jason has more than Travis, but there's some interesting clips in there. It'd be worth talking about at least.
Perfect.
I'd love to get
your
I'd love
opinion. To. We'll do our little Siskel and Ebert movie review.
Yeah. Well, on a casual tip, Dustin, I have 2 quick questions for you. One is, what are your thoughts on this thing? And 2 is actually a patient opinion. I had one, and I told my patient, well, I'm talking to my guy Dustin tonight, and I'll get his opinion on it. The first thing is about sport fights. Last night we had the Chargers and the Cowboys. There was a few fights in the stands and also after the game. I know one time you came to visit me in San Diego, and we watched whatever the name of the melee in the garden.
Mayhem in the garden. Yeah.
Indiana Pacers, Ron Artest. Look it up if you haven't seen it. It was wild. We were in it was a bar, really. Yeah. I was going to say restaurant. It was more of a bar, but that was crazy to watch. But it made me think, man, what is it about fans that keep them fighting like that? I know your team loses and you're upset, but it makes me feel like we're kind of not very evolved, that we can't go to a sporting event and not end up in fights. I mean, there was innocent people that got punched, and it was chaotic. And I was thinking, if you took your kids there, that'd be a negative experience for them.
Yeah, no, it's alcohol, man. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, you're right.
I like my cocktails, and like having a couple, but every once in a while. But we were at the Rams game, that Rams Charger game. The guy in front of us he had 2 kids and his wife, and he was collecting his cups, and he had about 5. Me and my dad were counting. He had 5 or 6 before halftime.
Dang.
I mean, yeah, that's just, and he was stumbling all over trying to get in and out, and he peed like 3 or 4 times, and then they left at halftime, so it's like, I don't know. Hopefully he wasn't driving, but I mean, but those are the kind of guys that, you say one wrong thing or it's just going to set them off. So it's unfortunate for sure. I thought you were first talking about fights on the field, and that's a different story. But
Well, that happens too, but that's,
yeah,
almost just a ramp up of energy.
yeah,
It's almost just, posturing. I don't take that too serious. It doesn't escalate
no,
too much.
no, it doesn't. But it just happens because you get in the heat of the battle, and it just happens. But and it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, look,
but
you're wearing pads, you have people
yeah,
breaking you up.
yeah,
The game is controlled violence. No one's going to get
yeah,
hurt for the most part. The man
right.
in the stands,
Yeah,
I
like you
mean,
said, women and children around, and that's the sad thing because there's kids usually around watching this, and it's just adults behaving badly for the most part. And yeah, it's too bad, but innocent people get hurt. I saw one, I think it was a Raider fan, just got dropped. He was coming up the stairs and he said something, got too close to the guy, and the guy just dropped him twice and then kept going after him. The guy ended up going down the stairs, and everybody's videoing it, right? And that's
here's
the
what I'm
sad
going to
thing.
say. Here's my piece of advice to the dozens or hundreds or thousands of people listening is if that happens and you're in the stands and the person is higher than you, yo, walk away. You're not going to win that fight. 9 times out of 10, the person that's higher up is going to win that battle. Even if you're a worse
Yeah,
puncher or
yeah,
boxer or fighter, like it's just the physics of it are crazy.
yeah. Gravity
Having somebody
wins.
who's taller. And what I just don't like is somebody can get seriously hurt. If we were in high school or college, you throw a few blows. I mean, I've taken a few, thrown a few. It's not the end of the world. But in that situation, man, you could sock somebody, knock them out. They could fall, smack their head on the concrete, on those stairs, on a rock. And you're just like, man, we were in an argument. He hit me. I hit him. I was defending myself. And then, I mean, that's how I think now. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, dang, I'm like, I don't, not that like my hands are lethal weapons and I
yeah.
don't want to kill you, but like
It's not
if I have
worth
to
it.
protect myself, it's like you never know how that could end up. It's
Yeah,
just so many variables.
yeah,
Bummed me out. And then made me think of that fight that we saw. And then I was just
yeah.
like, man, Dustin's been to so many sporting events with his daughters. I wonder if he's ever, been at a softball game or volleyball game where things got out of hand.
Yeah. I I usually I can't think of any other time. I usually always just get them out of there.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Even if I'm by myself, if it's not involving me and I'm not, and I don't have to protect somebody else. That's, if there's tons of people there, I don't need to be in the middle of it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll continue. I think I didn't hit the nail on the head like you did. You're like, it's alcohol, man.
yeah.
That doesn't happen at like a Grateful Dead concert where people are like,
Just yeah,
smoking a doobie or
stoned out of their
something.
mind. Yeah. Yep.
That's true. That's true. One last real question, and then we can call it for the night. I know we both have patient files and things to get to, but I had a patient who has a son who is 15, kind of lean like I am, and plays football. And his comment to his mom was like, well, she said she got a request for a cash app during the appointment from her son. And I said, what for? She's like, I got a cash app him $14. And I said, what's going on? And she's like, he said he's hungry and he needs to get a burrito. I said, dang, a $14 burrito. And so we went through that, how burritos used to be $5 and now they're
Right.
10, but you get them delivered and it's 14. And um, he said he wanted to bulk up. And she's like, is there anything that you would recommend? Like he really wants to like, he's like pretty lean and he's getting bruised up and he wants to, next year is his senior year, he wants to be able to put on some weight. What do you think is an appropriate amount of weight to put on in a year's time and what would you recommend? So he's low hanging fruit. I said take a multivitamin. I said if he's trying to put on say 10 pounds by next September, I think that that's feasible. That's a pound a month average over the next 10 months, which is super doable for someone who's 16 turning 17 and you're growing. And then the talk turned to creatine and if that's good or bad and what is too young or what's too old or is it only for athletes. I said at 16 I don't think he's too young. I think it would be beneficial. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. You have kids, you work
Mhm.
with all levels of athletes as well. So I wanted to open that discussion up. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, so my background, as you know, is exercise phys and nutrition. So,
Mhm.
and I come from a biochemistry standpoint. So that's right up my alley. I have that conversation with a lot of people. I got it from my kids. Um, so, but the conversation, you hit the head on so a lot of times the parents come in and say, where do we start? And the kids doing this, and this, but they're not doing one critical thing that I say. So they'll be taking, a big old mega dose of protein or whatever, but without the multivitamin and mineral, that's the foundation. You can't fully absorb all that other stuff, and your body's not fully gonna accept those amino acids without having that building block of and foundation of those multivitamins and minerals. So,
Mhm.
so I'm glad you mentioned that to them. You get them on that, get them on their omegas. Those two are like the foundational. Then you can start adding your BCAs, so good branch chain amino acid. Those are the building blocks. So as they're breaking down their muscle fibers, you want to replenish those within 45 minutes after their workout. And then on top of that, like the main supplement I always recommend is creatine. So from a biochemistry standpoint, the reason I like it is because the way it works is it doesn't bulk you up like protein shakes or calorie enhancers. Basically what it's doing is it's working with the chemistry. ATP is the energy source, that one of the fuel sources our bodies use. So it's working on that principle. So ATP is 3-phosphate molecule, right?
Mhm.
So follow me on this. So ATP is what our body uses for fuel, one of them besides sugar. So as soon as your body needs something to do, it's going to burn off one of those phosphates. Now you got ADP, a 2-phosphate molecule floating around. Well, what you need to do then is get more phosphate to add to that ADP to make an ATP. Yeah,
From
so
a
now you
double
have
to
your
a
fuel.
triple.
Yeah, so what creatine is, which everybody forgets to add, but it's creatine phosphate. So if
Mhm.
you read it, it's creatine phosphate. So what you're adding is phosphate to your system. So now you got all these free floating phosphates from creatine in your bloodstream, and those phosphates go and find and bind to those 2-phosphate molecules, making it a 3-phosphate molecule. So now your body can have more fuel to burn, right? And
Right.
so then you can actually rep out 3, 4, 5 more reps where you couldn't before, because now you have the energy source. So you're not getting big because of creatine, you're getting big because now you have the energy to rep out more weight. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
It
So
makes 100% sense. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I tell them, hey, your body's making it already. So the cool thing about creatine is if you get off of it, it's not like your body's going to go into a depleted mode or a panic mode where it needs more. It's not going to go through withdrawals from pulling it away. You're just not going to have that extra energy you're used to.
Right.
But so it's totally safe. It does come with cramping. So people got to be aware of that, because it does take out water, so you got to hydrate more with it,
Mhm.
take your electrolytes more with it. But besides that, I'm a big proponent of it. Neurologically, it works really well too, for a
Sure.
lot of neurologic conditions. So, yeah.
Cognitively, I feel like it makes a difference,
Oh
you
yeah,
know? Like I
for
think
sure. I know we were talking about that the other night about
right,
that too.
right.
So, yeah. So
And
I don't know if I answered your question for the patient, but
no, you really did. I like how you explained it from the ADP to ATP.
mhm.
I was breaking that down to a high school student. He's like, "Ah, we're learning about that in biology right now in chemistry, and like it's super confusing." And I said, "Dude, look at that stool over there, and it happened to be a three-legged stool." I said, "That's like ATP. It's balance. That's your energy. You need the three pegs of the leg. If you have two pegs of the leg of the stool, what happens?" He's like, "Well, it's wobbly, and I'm like, "Well, it's not stable. The ADP is not quite what you want. You want the ATP, you want that third leg, which is the phosphate that you mentioned." And so he was like, so creatine is like just a bunch of spare legs that you can make like a, more two-legged stool into a
Mhm.
three-legged stool. I said, if that's how you want to think of it,
Yeah.
that's fine too. But yeah, so the one thing that you did leave out that was important: how young can somebody take
Oh,
creatine without a negative benefit, or a
yeah.
negative, say not negative benefit, a negative, have a negative outcome?
Yeah, so I think it's a judgment call for a lot of people. It depends on the physicality and what they need it for, right?
Right.
Most 10, 11, 12-year olds are not pushing their body to an excess where they need that extra ATP, right? To gain, right? So usually it's around the 15, 16-year-old mark where they're actually starting to dabble in some weights, doing more high intensity type workouts where, it could be a benefit. So
Mhm.
I usually don't recommend it for less than that, so, but from a
Um,
safety standpoint, like most things, like if you can give a kid Tylenol or Advil from 12 years old on,
yeah.
I'm fine. That's how my marker is, right? And I'm not saying that that's okay for them either,
Sure.
but that's kind of like if anybody wants to argue, well, why are you giving creatine? Well, did you give Advil to your 12-year-old? Well,
Right.
yeah, that's a drug, that's a chemical.
A
So
100%.
right, so that's how I always have that argument with a parent, and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Well, yeah, because you've been brainwashed that that's okay, that's needed. They're not deficient in Advil,
Right.
ibuprofen,
Right.
but so
No,
so
great point.
yeah.
Great point. Actually, it's important to look at things like that in that respect.
Mhm.
Um, Awesome, man. Well, I think that answers my question. Basically what I had told her was, in my opinion, 16 is kind of the floor of the age. Not that you can't take it at 15 or 14, but I think at that age, if you really want to become more athletic, you can start with the weights. My kind of general rule is just let kids be kids till they're 10,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
10, 11, 12 band stuff, and then if you want to, 13, 14, 15, 16, start them with proper weight training, proper technique, and you can start with a couple pounds or body weight and then build it up.
yeah.
And so I think 16 is kind of my bottom line. He's 16. It seems, you can tell he's a young little athlete who's going to be stronger a year from today, and I think that'll give him a bit of a natural boost.
Yeah, I having a background in exercise phys and working strength and conditioning for all these years, I typically start kids around 10, 11, 12 on full function body weight stuff.
Hmm.
So my typical progression is around 10 years old. We're working on squats, push ups, sit ups, body movement stuff. Get
Great.
really comfortable with moving your body in proper ranges.
Yeah.
They're old enough. If they can squat in the woods, we should have technique so they can do it, right? But see, what happens is around junior high they get a little more physical, and if we haven't taught them proper form, once they hit 15 freshman year, 15 years old, 14 years old freshman year, they're going into the weight room for freshman football, and these coaches that have no background, they're loading them up on a squat rack, and then the macho thing comes in,
Yeah.
and they're putting 225 on these 14-year-olds that have never done a full body weight squat, and
Right.
they're having them go ass to grass and saying that's the standard, and these kids are hurting themselves. So anytime I have a younger patient that I know that's their track, I always, that summer before, if they haven't started already, I really beg their parents to get them in with some strength coaches that I recommend, and get them in learning proper form and function, so when they jump in summer ball and they're in the weight room, at least they have the knowledge of what a squat looks like, what a deadlift looks like, what a clean looks like, proper presses. That way, because what happens is the coach says, okay, I want everybody line up, there's 5 racks, everybody go, and then they go from station to station and nobody's watching them. And then it's two guys that are 14 years old, you know, looking at the cheerleader in the corner, and that's how they get hurt. So, yeah.
Sounds like a personal story.
Well, I'll tell you that some other time. That 100% was a personal senior year. I'll tell you about that sometime.
Can't wait.
My spotter was looking at the cheerleader, not me, and I
Yeah,
screwed myself up, man. So
man, that's terrible.
yeah, so that's funny. You called me out on that.
That's hilarious. Well, I know you got some travel this week, Dustin, and an early start tomorrow, and
Yes,
we
sir.
both have some stuff to wrap up this evening. But I'm glad we got to talk about, Watson's elbow dislocation, Justin Fields' thumb dislocation, Jimmy G and his, what we thought was going to be some serious internal injuries. That turns out to be okay. Anthony Richardson with his AC joint, whether he has surgery or not, we'll wait to find out. look, Aaron Rodgers is an interesting thing. I can't wait to see how that tracks month to month. And the haters need to stop hating. Let the man just set his own goals and his own expectations.
Is
And
that a
sit back
Taylor
and
Swift
watch.
reference? You couldn't get through one podcast without a Taylor Swift reference.
What was the reference? Is that a song?
Yeah, haters got it. Yeah,
Is that
look it
really a
up.
song?
Yeah, it's okay.
That's not really my genre of music.
Yeah, did you see my daughter called me out on our podcast reel on TikTok?
No, what
She
she
was
said.
she was clowning like I think she called me a Swiftie and that I don't get it wrong, he knows all the songs and all that. So
That's hilarious. Well,
yeah.
I'll have to find out. You might just be fronting. I don't know what you listen to when you work out these days.
No comment.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Dustin?
No, all good. I think yeah, nice little recap at the end there. I like it. And yeah, look
Good.
forward to a good rest of the week and pick it up next week.
Yeah, we'll talk during the week. Safe travels, and we'll touch base. And I look forward to seeing you in studio on Monday. We'll do it again.
Sounds good, buddy.
Awesome. To all those who listen, we appreciate you. Tell a friend. We appreciate that as well. This is The Second Opinion. We are a sports medicine podcast. We're here every week with you. We appreciate you guys listening and also the comments and questions. As I was saying earlier, it's nice to be getting a few more of those. We'll start tailoring some of our episode time to directly answering those questions, but it doesn't go unnoticed or unread. We appreciate you. Once again, everybody have a safe week. Have a great week. And Dustin, I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, buddy. Have a good
All
one.
right, my brother. Good night.
All right.